Now, following a ballot vote, 97% of junior doctors have voted in favour of taking strike action in a dispute over pay and working conditions.
Junior Doctor Brian Doyle joins us on the line to discuss why that decision was made and just how bad the situation is. Good morning to you, Brian. We're seeing that. I mean, the big thing for me, Brian, is the level of burnout. I mean, almost 80% of junior doctors are saying they are on the verge of burnout. We know how difficult a time it has been over the last couple of years, but give us an idea of what your day-to-day is like and how difficult the situation is, please.
Morning, Tommy. Morning, Muireann, and thanks to you and your viewers for having us on this morning. NCHDs in the ground, we're demoralised, we're frustrated, we're angry, and the issues we're having, they're going on for a large number of years now. They predate the pandemic. You know, life as a junior doctor, you work a regular week, but in addition to that, you do, arduous on-call obligations where you cover the hospital at night time and over weekends. And unfortunately, due to the ongoing staffing crisis, we're often doing those shifts in tandem with a normal work week. And we know that almost 100% of junior doctors across the country are routinely working more than their contracted hours, and over 96% are routinely working more than the European Working Time Directive allows, which is over 48 hours in a week. In fact, many are working 60 and 70-hour weeks on a routine basis. It is incredibly hard. You spend about 10 to 12 years of your career, which is 25% of your working life as a junior doctor, training to become a consultant. And what that means is you're moving hospital every 6 months, every 12 months. I'm on hospital, I think, number 10 at this stage in my training. I have another 3 years left at least. And you're trying to set up, in a community, start a family, and just do normal life things that people want to do. And unfortunately, that means that NCHDs are increasingly demoralised and are at risk of burnout.
Brian, I'm just wondering when it comes to the public, because when we were talking about hospitals all the time, the situation was there. And sure, weren't we all clapping during the pandemic because, you were doing all the great work. We've had medical scientists. They went on strike recently. And people are always talking about nurses. I don't think we talk about the pay for porters enough in hospitals and the work that they do and cleaners. But when it comes to doctors, do you sometimes find the public are like, sure, they're doctors, they're fine, they're going to become a consultant. So you don't garner maybe the same level of sympathy when it comes to your working conditions?
I think we're not always the best at advocating for ourselves. We go into this profession with patients at heart. Everything we do is for our patients, and it's a huge privilege to do the role that we do. There isn't a morning that I regret getting out of bed and going to work, and I never leave work upset at how my day has gone in terms of the care that we're able to provide for patients. But I'm tired. And this is not about pay. This is not a pay claim. It's about the conditions that we work within. I and many of my colleagues, in fact, all junior doctors, are doctors in training. And as part of that, we're required to, meet certain obligations with regard to exams and certain competencies that we need to be able to do to perform as a doctor and ultimately become a consultant at the end of it all. Because of the hours we're working at the moment, junior doctors are not able to get leave to take the exams that they need to do. We don't have ring-fenced time to learn the procedures that we need to learn in the most appropriate way. We're often doing things kind of haphazard in and around providing all of those excess hours that we're working for the health service. If doctors are reporting they're at risk of burnout, you seriously have to question, how can we best provide care for our patients if that's what the problem is? Most of the major patient safety bodies internationally, the Institute of Medicine in the States, will tell you that if you don't look after your staff cannot adequately look after your patients. And we're sending alarm bells out there to the health service to say, you need to listen to us and you need to start to take action now so that we can do our jobs to the best of our ability and be supported better in our training.
100%. I mean, because, listen, a lot of people who work and they work hard, they're tired. I mean, listen, I do a show like this and I'm tired and I make mistakes on a constant basis, but it's not life or death. I mean, really what you're doing, like, do you fear that when you are close to burnout and you aren't thinking straight, that you genuinely could make a decision that could have a really serious negative impact on someone's life?
Absolutely. I think you're very conscious of that. When you're working long hours that there is a risk of that. And as a result, you do things on a slower basis. You have to slow down. You have to double check things. You have to check with your colleagues and that kind of thing. And you put those safety measures in to make sure that you are safe. And we're I think by our very nature, risk averse, and that's a good thing. That's necessary for patient safety. But we cannot continue to go on like this. It shouldn't be like that. If you want to attract the right people into any profession, you need to look after them and make sure that they are able to achieve the education that they need to become a consultant, for example, or a nurse or a physiotherapist or whatever it is.
I think for anyone who's been in hospital recently, certainly, going in, standing at the window when my father was in there, and it was the junior doctors who were constantly checking there all the time, working, 12 to 14 hours to 20 hours. It was just madness. And we're losing so many doctors to emigration. So it was like 272 emigrated to Australia in 2019. It was up to 402 last year. So this brain drain is constantly happening in Ireland. And do you think that these conditions that you're currently working under, Brian, it's going to encourage it more because the working conditions are so much better in other countries?
I think absolutely. And we have a strong tradition in this country. We live on an island, and I think most Irish people are very family centred by their nature and want to be here in Ireland. Travelling is great. From a health service perspective, doctors who go abroad are experiencing different health systems. They're getting subspeciality training that might not be available here, and they're bringing it back to provide those expertise here locally. But unfortunately, when they are away, they're seeing that there is an alternative way of providing healthcare, a safer way for patients, and a more sustainable way for doctors. And you seriously have to pit that up against your desire to come back home. We should be one of the best places in the world to come and practice medicine, but unfortunately, we're just putting walls up in front of doctors all of the time. We're expecting the impossible all of the time, and as a result, as you mentioned, Tommy, nearly 80% of junior doctors are reporting that they're at risk of burnout.
I mean, when we're seeing that 400 have emigrated to Australia, and you're talking about the shortage and the working conditions and how you're having to work harder because so many are leaving. So when you see that 97% of the non-consultant hospital doctors are deciding to dispute these working conditions, what is the answer? What do you want?
So there's a couple of things. I think, first and foremost, there are serious contract breaches going on within the HSE that need to be acknowledged first and foremost. I think when you don't acknowledge problems, you can't address them. So the first thing that needs to happen is the HSE need to acknowledge that there is an issue there with the hours that doctors are working. They're routinely working beyond their contracted hours, beyond the safe hours that the European Union have set, which is 48 hours in the week. Like I said, we have doctors working 60, 70, 80-hour weeks, and that is just not safe or sustainable. And in many instances, doctors are not being paid for those hours. Hospitals are refusing to recognise that they're working them, and they're not paying them for them. So we need enforcement of that, and we need more heavy fines for hospitals reporting of it. And we need to digitise and centralise the whole pay system for the HSE. There are over 30 acute hospitals in Ireland. Each one of them individually employs doctors. As a junior doctor, you are a temporary worker effectively. You're working 6 to 12 months in one hospital before moving on to another one. And you're doing that for 25% of your career. That's just not sustainable. It is not good for your mental health, and it does lead to a risk of burnout. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I think, is to recognise that for 25% of your career, when you're moving around, it's not conducive to a family life. We need to renegotiate the NCHD contract to recognise that there are now more women than ever before in our workforce. Over 50% of NCHDs are women. Women and men alike report that they're delaying having families as a result of the incompatibility of their career with that. And that is just not acceptable in 2022.
No. There's no doubt.
It sounds pretty vicious, but everyone in their head is like, sure, they're going to be a doctor. I think you've brought up an awful lot of issues there, Brian Doyle, junior doctor. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really do appreciate you talking about that. And I don't know how many people would be like, well, I'm working these hours, but I'm not getting paid for them. No. And then you stay at work. Is that something that you'd be willing to do? And we want to talk about everyone who's in the health service here. What you make
Whenever
of
you think that we train 750 Irish doctors a year, but lose so many to emigration.
There's an issue. There's a huge issue. We'd love to hear what you think about this and if you work in the healthcare service. We'll be back with you very shortly.